every industry tries to give itself vernacular that make it seem special.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I got the thing over here, and if you don't have this, your life's not going to be good.
Proprietary trademark name. Yeah.
So the what this industry goes after is you have to have structured water. And then if you have unstructured water, that's bad. I'm really not aligned with that at all. There's no such thing as unstructured water. Everything is structured. The question is it coherent? Is it harmonized? Is it life supporting? Or is it chaotic?
Hmm.
And what's the spectrum there?
Welcome back to another episode of Cultivating Change, everyone. I'm your host, Alex Corey. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me. We're going to do a really interesting deep dive into the consciousness of water today. We're going out of the Rockefeller, hyper westernized, reductionistic left brain that I can certainly inhabit most of the time into the way more fun, conscious aspect of water. We're going over structure, we're going over biofields, we're going over coherence and resonance today. And if you've been interested in, if you felt like there's something missing from water, if there's some life missing, the life-giving aspects of water, not just molecules, there's something deeper there, this one's for you. I'm most excited for our conversation today because this is like the feeling, the physical, the emotional, the not chemical version of water. So I'm usually stuck in the like chemistry side, which is boring for the most part. And you have a tech that is resonance, right? So I'm very curious about how you got there, and we'll tell the story of how we reconnected after a couple of years somewhere in the middle of there. But if you could just briefly introduce yourself and how you got into water, because it's so unique and specific.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Durkin. I'm the CEO of the Wellness Enterprise, and I thought all I wanted to do was like sell stuff and make money. I was so about myself. I mean, for my 35th birthday, I gave myself a Porsche with my initials on the license plate. And it was all about me. And, I had clients and I thought I did right by a lot of them. But it was like, how many commissions can I make and how much money can I make in the stock market? And then I had like this little thread. It's funny, the thread goes all the way back to like being a drunk college kid. And I'm like throwing a beer can into a blue container. And I'm like, where does that go? I'm like, where does that, it's like really bothering me. Where does it go? And so when these two things collided, I decided to use my position as a successful financial advisor to start giving back to my community. And I had like this, a feeling I hadn't known before of like just so like I can show it more visually than I can like put words to it. It was like so strong, and I was like, we can get rid of single serve plastic bottles, and I can do that. And so even though I haven't done that, like the passion to go down that road took me places. And one of the places it took me to become the chairman of the recycling committee in my town. And we did a 2-year project working through the bureaucracy to put recycling bins all over town. And after we finished, I went and drove around to see our work, and I felt my heart break. And I wasn't familiar with my emotions. I didn't understand what was going on. It took about 3 to 4 months before I understood what happened. And when I figured it out, I went to the next committee meeting and I said, we missed our mark. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, we put all these bins in around town and we gave people a reason to feel good about having a single serve container. That's not what I want to do. I want to transform the dialogue so that if somebody has a plastic bottle, they drop it out of their hands and they never pick another one up again. They want nothing to do with it. Who wants to start a transformation project with me? And it was my sole hand up in the air. And so I took out a piece of paper and I wrote, I resign, and I signed my name and I walked out. I was like, peace out. So I would say, Alex, it was a calling. It was like the breadcrumbs had been left waiting for my awareness to come to it. And then I did the same thing that everybody does. I jumped into the chemistry of water, And I wanted to sell water filters because water filters would be good for me. I would get a stream of income. And the residuals, like I could be out windsurfing and people would be buying water filters, and that was like my vision for my life. And God was like, yeah, it's not going to go that way. And I literally, I like still laugh that I could say this to you. I've had 4 different instances of like private labeling and starting filtration businesses, and I've lost money on all 4. Like if you're buying a filter for a third or a half of what you're selling it for, and you actually get some sales, it's hard to lose all the money 4 times, but I managed it. And the message was, if you don't align yourself with the energy of water, you will be miserable. I was like,
Do you feel
okay.
like you were blocking yourself subconsciously because it wasn't correct, or do you think you were being redirected?
I have it as a higher calling than that. I have it as I didn't have any choice. I would not call this subconscious
Mm.
undermining. Like one of the steps along the way is I got involved with Kangen water
Mm.
and I set out a business plan. That was my first post financial advisor business plan. And the plan was to sell 100 a month. And I sold 11 in a year. And I was shocked because I've never failed at selling anything in my life. And I was so sure of it when I started, like the Kangen experience. It's like, yeah, this must be right. And there were great things that happened. Like my friend Kim had cancer and she was supposed to die and she didn't. And so I was so sure, but that was not my path. Like
Mm.
it would not open for me. So I think that's like higher calling more than subconscious reflection. But if you go, I've got my book here just within like arm's reach, and if you look at the subtitle that I chose, right? The book's called Flow. It's on Amazon. Um, from pure and safe water to higher states of consciousness.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm saying is, in order to be credible and to be able to write this book, I had to figure out pure and safe.
Yeah.
I had to start where everybody starts. But it didn't resonate with me as a solution. It was just a step. And then I found that there's a dream inside ourselves. There's something that compels forward that's beyond anything I can think up. And I had to follow that because that was my path.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I said we're moving from sort of another way is from the mental to the like almost DNA resonance level. Just, yeah, a path or a calling.
Well, I mean, along the way, I learned that water's alive. It has consciousness. And it's like, I mean, the Dr. Emoto photographs have been seen
Mm.
globally. Dr. Masaru Emoto, Japanese naturopathic doctor, took photos of water crystals and showed us that water has resonance. It gets talked about as memory, and that's cool, but I like resonance. So if I tape, love on here as a word, then that affects this water, as does every light in this room, every thought you and I express, how we choose our words, our cadence, are we holding our breath? Like all of it. Are
Mm.
we anxious? Are we in love and joy? It all influences water. And so what I like to talk about the most there is that water carries resonance. And it's really great. Like it doesn't prefer and it doesn't resent. It doesn't try to do something with us. It just carries the resonance. So if you are unintentionally, I think a good example is you take the water that goes into the water treatment plant down at your municipality, and they push it undercover and they fill it with a gas called chlorine. And they have to put it undercover because the gas wants to go in the air. So water doesn't go, oh, you made me carry this chlorine. I'm so pissed, right? What it does is it gets pushed out of the water treatment facility into a long straight pipe. It doesn't get sent through a waterfall to frolic. It doesn't get a bendy pipe to go on a joyful ride with. It gets, you're going through this pipe. Like that's what man does with water. And water doesn't come out the other side, go, oh man, I'm exhausted. I hate you, right? What it does is it reflects the resonance. And what happens in those long straight pipes and the rest of the distribution model we have in the majority of the world, plastic bottles and long straight pipes, is that water becomes H2O. And we've been educated into a myth that says water is H2O. No, that's man-made water. That's the water that carries chlorine and that goes through long straight pipes. And so when the water comes out the other side, if you put your face down to it right when it's coming out of the faucet, you'll smell chlorine because the water's going, I could stretch. I got some air here. And it's going, I'm going to give the chlorine back joyfully. Like, here you go. You can have your chlorine back. It puts the chlorine into the air. And the wider the container you put it in and the more shallow it is, the faster all that chlorine will release. So the best chlorine filter in the world for somebody who doesn't have money is something that's wide and shallow because the chlorine will leave on its own. But now the water is still H2O. And what that means is it's in nature or in your cells or in a plant, in the heart of livingness, water is H3O2.
Yeah.
And when it's H3O2, it has a negative electron available to donate. That's why it's in its natural form. It's the original energy source for people on the planet. So let's back up for a second to help people get.
Yeah, you just went from like chlorinated treatment plants to structured water real fast.
Yeah. Well, I'll do it in every paragraph because that's been my journey. Like it's what I am for 13 years. And so
what was one of your first experiences of water isn't just water? Water wasn't just H2O.
Great memory comes to mind. I went to this was toward the end of the Kangen phase and the beginning of the structured phase. And I'd sold 11 Kangen machines in a year, and I went to participate in a workshop, and there were 11 people. The person putting on the workshop was my first structured water device customer. And the way the conversation went was, I got this thing. I don't understand it. I don't know really what it does. All I can really say is, I'll sell it to you at cost with an unlimited money back guarantee. And could you just ask your highest guidance if you're supposed to own it, please? Right? Like I literally couldn't say anything. And she's like, sure. And she goes, I am. And I was like, okay. So she got it and she loved it. So I went to this workshop. There were 11 people. We sat down over lunch on the Saturday and she brought it out to the table. And by the end of the weekend, 5 of the 11 participants, so 50% of what was not me, because there were 10 other people, purchased a device from me. I was just there as a participant. And I was like, oh, okay, something's going on here. But that's not the answer to your question. That's just where the homework happened. So she gave me homework when I left there. She told me to go talk to water. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so some number of weeks later, I was in my self-induced misery, going through some mood, going for a walk along the boardwalk at the beach. And I had this recollection of my homework. And I said, oh, okay, talk to water. Well, I'm surrounded by the ocean. And I go, all right, water, I'm turning this issue that I'm pondering on, I'm turning it over to you. What should I do? And I look to the ocean, and this wave breaks at the outer sides, and the barrel comes and meets in the middle. And I go, oh, the middle ground, huh? And I get this tingling feeling in my body. And I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So I started being really open that the water in the plants and the ocean and the cup and the people was all there in oneness to guide me. And I just needed to become more sensitive. So I started, like, when I get in a mood, I'd run down to the actually it was the other way. I walk down, like, you know. And even when it was cold, I'd get my bare feet out in the sand, like at the edge of the water. I'd go in further if it was warmer, but I'd touch the water with my feet. And then I would do long tone chakra balancing that I learned from Jonathan Goldman, sound healing. And I would basically just make tones at the edge of the water. And then I would like reconstitute. I would become coherent again. I would drop my mood like every time the mood would just go away. And then I'd start getting flooded with inspiration about what I'd been thinking about. And then I would run back up to the house because I was afraid back then that inspiration would go away.
Yeah.
I'd be running for my keyboard so I could record all this stuff that was coming through me. So over time, I learned that I could walk with equanimity in both directions, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, you
Yes.
mentioned a word in there. It was coherent.
Oh, I love that word.
Right. It's one of those words that's hard to describe with language for me, but it feels correct. Like
Yeah.
the word carries some resonance or weight to it. And I'm like, I
I,
don't actually know what that means or explain it, but I like it.
I think you're talking to the right guy about that because I learned the word in this stage of my life, the water stage, and actually in the formative stages when I was learning the difference between chemistry and structure. So I'd say you're right on track for when that word would come up and capture your attention. One of my favorite ways of seeing it is watching, it's typically a movie, but I've done some snorkeling too, a school of fish.
Hmm.
And if you watch them, they're all in sync together moving. And if some predatory threat or something comes up, they're just they're just going that way. Or if you watch a flock of birds, you can see a species moving together on its own behalf. And then, once you start chewing on the word and then you start talking about it in the world, you start getting stories from other people and they start filling it in. So one of the things I learned is that if you have a school of geese and they're flying and one of them goes down because they can't stay up, right, because of health or whatever, another one goes down with it. And they stay together until they rejoin. So inside of coherence, it doesn't have to just be the school moving together, but it's the species acting together.
Hmm.
And so one of the reasons I would say we don't have this as a primary word that a lot of us use in this world is that we're not a coherent species, we're a chaotic species. And so I think it's really beautiful to have conversations about water where we're remembering the truth about water together and we're becoming more coherent. We're on behalf of awakening ourselves and awakening our species. I think that's where that word feels right. So I really love the way you introduced that because you're willing to surrender to that something feels aligned without knowing in your mind what that is. And that is a huge key to journeying from chemistry based water and the concepts that are there to actually coming into alignment with all that's possible with water to empower you and support your life.
Yeah. And personally, I've always wondered why, like my reductionist side is hard and very defensive. And I've asked myself why. I'm just like, why am I not okay sometimes with just not knowing? And then I answer my own question. It just makes me feel kind of small, probably from childhood. It's like the answer to feeling small used to be proving more, knowing more. And it's kind of the same thing that I'm working my way out of now, which is the intuition and the knowing and the feeling instead of the mentalizing. Like my life is so much better the less I mentalize.
That's so beautiful. And I want to tell you like the best news ever about that journey that I know, which is that once you sufficiently relax into trusting oneness and knowing that you're just a part of something, you get to let yourself off the hook for all the things that you thought you needed to do right.
Hmm.
Then you just become flow, and whatever happens is okay. And so for me, I had an enormous amount of anxiety and fear tied to perfectionism and these concepts of like that I generated. And most often now I don't identify that way. I can still get fooled. No doubt about it. I can still trick myself into thinking I do the doing, but I don't do the doing. The doing happens and we witness it. And so if we could just unfold to there, it's like the layers of stress that leave our being are enormous.
Yeah, that brought up the pattern I see because I'm surrounded by hundreds of people who are doing water in some way, either structured water, ionized water, some form of intentional intentionally putting not tap water or just putting intention behind water that goes in their body. And almost everyone that I've seen, and it's still a mystery to me, it challenges and unravels gently belief systems in myself, and I like watch it happen to other people. Like people's, it looks like their personality is changing, but inside for me it's kind of belief systems crumbling, and I have not figured out the mechanism of why, and I'm starting to not care, which is really nice.
I have an answer to that one too, and it's a really beautiful answer. What if our evolution is actually parsed out or allowed or created by water itself rather than by us?
Right.
What if? I mean, I just give you the question, right? You gotta find your own truth, but I'll give you something to chew on, right? So when you think about the origin of the structured water industry, how far back do you go? Who's your first scientist, mentor, naturalist? Who comes to mind?
The wow, multi-layered question. Once I started researching, it changed. The first one that ever came across was probably a moto, but the first one I actually like investigated was Gerald Pollack. And then when I started researching more, I was like, oh, this is a couple hundred years old. But Pollack was the first one that I like watched a full video on.
Okay, cool. So Pollock is like the last 30 years, right? Something like that. 20, 30 years. I mean, he's 80 now, but I don't know when his water research started. It didn't start at the beginning of his career. But if we go
Right.
back before the people of the last 30 years, one of the first ones I landed on was Viktor Schauberger,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
right? So do you remember the basic concept for Viktor Schauberger? Like see and comprehend nature. Like
Mm,
that's what he did. And what he was doing originally was he was moving, using the word logs wouldn't really be the right way, but picture a tree that's trimmed so that it is a log. It's a massive thing. And he's moving them downstream. And he figured out if he spun them, they moved better than if he didn't. So he discovered by watching and comprehending nature the vortex,
mm,
the vortex spin. And so that to me is the origin point where I start being aware of the evolution that has got a lot more scientists in the last 20 or 30 years. But I go back to Viktor Schauberger and comprehending nature. So what if what nature was ready to do 100 and something years ago was to begin to support human beings? Like one human has an inspiration to go look at nature. And then 120 years later, some humans have taken their scientific knowledge and combined it with the building of that knowledge base and figured out how to create devices so you and I can be in a modern home and have the properties of that living water, that vortex, right? That when salmon swim upstream,
mm.
they don't just blunt take on all the force of the stream going down. They find the vortex that's going up and they just shoot up through the vortex, right? That's how they get upstream. When water goes up a 200-foot tree, there's no sucking mechanism at the top of the tree that can pull water 200 feet, right? When water gets distributed to the ends of the capillaries and the furthest points in our bodies, it's not because our heart is a pump. It's because it vortexes. Our heart is a vortex that spins water, and the spinning is what gets it there.
I think Thomas
So,
Cohen was the first one I heard that from. Is that
Thomas
accurate?
Cowan,
Yeah,
yeah, Dr. Thomas
Cohen.
Cowan,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
the break point in my mind is the switch from like the hard Newtonian chemistry to a subject that I understand even less well, and I'm sure most people would be in the same boat, which is physics and almost quantum mechanics, where like now we're playing with even less tangible forces that are more fundamental. And that's what water is kind of abiding by, so to speak, right? Resonance forces.
so it's funny, the last dozen years or so, I've had such reverence for the people who have science minds like you
Mm,
do, who um, have done a great job of interpreting our culture's science and then applying it. And I had this admiration with that because I just like can't.
yeah.
I I'm not wired like you. Thankfully, like we're all not
Yeah.
exactly wired like each other, but there are predominant themes. And the feeling theme and the quantum physics are more closely aligned.
Yeah. Agreed.
And that's also more closely aligned with the heart energy. So what if in the middle of your beautiful chest, your heart is beating, going, Alex, pay attention to me, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Let go of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let go of all those thoughts and come here and feel absolute resonance of truth, singularity, and knowingness. And so you're on this journey, and so you've been rolling around doing the really great stuff somebody with a great mind would do, but you've never been fully fulfilled in any of it, right? Because we're on this journey of unfoldment. And now your heart is calling you and saying, come on, dude, we're fusing. And I think, if you study Greg Braden and what he says, I saw a video from him at least 10, maybe toward 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
showing a visual of the heart mind, like building strings toward each other, and that there was fusing going on. Like this is literally what's happening. So inside of the bigger question we were just in, what if water then makes that time
Mm-hmm.
and those insights available? What if? Like, I don't know, but it's worthy of consideration. And one of the places that helps me attribute the things I experience in life to, well, how do I know that's water? Is that people talk about water by volume and what percentage of the body is water, and the general number is like 70, but I think more accurate is you're born around 95% water, and if you stay to a ripe old prune like age, you die at like 50 or 60% water. But the more important number to me is that 99% of the actual water molecules in your body by count, of all the molecules in your body by count, are water molecules because
That's
they're
what I usually go off of. Yeah.
small. So you are a water sack,
Right.
like fully and completely.
Saltwater sack for the most part. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, with the perfect balance of minerals, right? And so what if that's what has the influence over what you understand and when you understand it? I just think it's a worthwhile question. For me, it carries some resonance, like there's some validity to it that I am um, I'm an achiever. I've gotten a lot done in life. I've accomplished great things in business. I've had athletic endeavors. I've had, a lot of things go. And then there's things in my life I just can't make them happen no matter how much of me I put to them. It's like I just beat my head against the wall and it just won't go. And then at some point it goes. And it doesn't go because I wanted it to or I was ready. It goes because it's in the ripeness of time.
Mm.
Like that fruit is ripe and it's ready for me to sink my teeth into it and to have that experience in life. And if it's not time, it's not time. So there's definitely a force that connects life that influences our capacity to get ourselves to do what we think we want to do. And I consider that through the lens of water.
Yeah. That, whenever you said that, it made me think of the Bovis scale, sort of life force energy. And the first time I saw that, I was like, what is this? Because I'm used to measuring things in like electrical potential or pH or all these very chemical terms. And then I see something that's measuring either like a chi or a life force scale. And I was like, what? It just blew my mind open. And that seems like a perfect segue into like how'd you move from that path and resonance, and how did you find what you now call the Aqua Energizer?
Yeah. Well, it's been a rich journey. And the journey started with an evolution of my intention to get rid of plastic bottles on the earth. Because after discovering Kangen water and living it for 2 years, and then finding my first structured water device, one of the things I became aware of is that water elections, choices that we make, are not permanent. Your water choices can change over time.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point, my choice was a Brita that went on my faucet, right? And that actually moved into Kangen, and that moved into structuring. Now, when structuring came to me, I didn't want it. I actually pushed it away for like 6 months. I was like, I don't want this because it has a really bad business model attached to it. There's no replacement parts. There's no maintenance. They're just simple devices that work kind of permanently. And so when I got my first device, I put it on my shower because I was still drinking Kangen at my kitchen sink. And I showered in it for 4 months. And then one morning I woke up and it was like clear as a bell. You're going to drink your shower water today. And I was like, all right, fine. Like, I'll drink it. So I got a jug and I filled it up for my shower and I drank it. And I was like, oh, like that was satisfying, you know? And so then I have this great concept to help people find their way. And it's how I figured out how to write my book because I didn't have a mentor to compare all these things for me. I call it 3 days on, 3 days off. So what I did was, it wasn't immediate that I understood this, but retroactively it sounds so easy.
Yeah.
Fill the shower water jug for 3 days and drink it. And then take the Kangen water for 3 days. And then take the tap water for 3 days. And then take the Kangen water and pour it through the shower device for 3 days. And just keep repeating the variations. Pour the tap water through the shower device for 3 days, right? Having these different experiences. And then that helps the body attune and show you. And eventually, I became fairly skilled at it because I tried a lot of different products, much more than I think other people, like normal people, aren't going to do what I did. But
I'm sure.
Okay. That's okay. I wrote the book and it's like $12.
Yeah.
So it's a huge savings over doing it yourself. But the important thing is, the really, really important thing is that everybody knows inside what's best for themselves. And I don't know what's best for you.
Yeah.
Right? I've endeavored to have the best device in the world that would be right for everyone. And no sooner do I get there with the Aqua Energizer than I get humbled by somebody. And long story, but a confluence of my mentors and this person's questions helped me understand, for this one specific person, the extra energy that's given from the Aqua Energizer and the copper construction are not a resonant match. Like, praying over her water is better for her than an Aqua Energizer. And that was a great humbling lesson. So 3 days on, 3 days off for a dozen years. And eventually forming a task force of people who measure subtle energy. And my mentors, my teachers, the people who care about water, nobody on this team was paid. They all just gave their time. And what we did was we examined every assumption we made in prior devices and we refined the Aqua Energizer to be the best attunement of sacred geometry and vortex with highest quality materials. And then when we got to the end of that stage, we actually realized that because we have minerals that grow and adhere on the outside of the devices, I feel like I'm denying the audience
I was gonna be like, I need to see this thing.
an
Yeah.
opportunity here.
There we go. There it is.
So there's
Oh, I
the
love it.
logo and the funnel that the water goes in and the exit point. And then
Yeah.
inside there's 33 Brazilian clear quartz crystals. And so we've determined that this sticker has to be placed in a different place on every single device,
Oh,
because
wow.
every one of these is alive when it comes out. And so we actually have somebody whose job it is to measure the balance point on each device and where to apply the sticker. So I love it when I get them. Like, I see a fair number of devices that come through the warehouse and whatnot, and sometimes the sticker's way up, or sometimes it's way down, or a little bit off to different angles and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love it when I see the difference, because I know that person's doing their job right, right? That this device has been harmonized to
So
have.
if it's all the way up at the top, that's not a physical balance, I'm assuming. It's not like a teeter-totter. So what balance are you referring to?
Yeah, it's a quantum physics balance. It's a inside of this aligned device. Where does the energetic? Our logo is very intentionally created. It
Hmm.
it by itself structures water,
Hmm.
right? So where it goes matters.
Yeah. I gotta ask a left brain question. When we say structure, is this a H3O2, just that, or is this doing something to like the electromagnetic field around the thing, or both, or more?
It's more. It's more. So if we start to unpack that together, every industry tries to give itself vernacular that make it seem special.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I got the thing over here, and if you don't have this, your life's not going to be good.
Proprietary trademark name. Yeah.
So the what this industry goes after is you have to have structured water, and then if you have unstructured water, that's bad. I'm really not aligned with that at all. There's no such thing as unstructured water. Everything is structured. The question is it coherent? Is it harmonized? Is it life supporting? Or is it chaotic?
Mm.
And what's the spectrum there? And so now, to answer your question, we're moving into a subtle energy subjective spectrum. So I can tell you, because I did it. I had somebody listen to a radio show I did 10 years ago. And he called me up and he said, I can teach you to structure water without your device. And I know that's where humanity ends.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm in. What do we need to do? He's like, come to my home, spend 2 days with me. I'll show you. Okay. So I went, I did it. And in 2 days, I was like, I agree. I agree with your contention. Next step is you come to my home. I'll fill it with 10 people for the weekend, and we'll do a workshop and we'll teach them. He's like, okay. So he came down. We had the 10 people. And then at the end of the weekend, I was like, how many people are sure they can structure water? All 10. Yes, we're good. So then I called them all a week later. I was like, how's it going? Nobody's structuring water.
Yep.
I was like, what happened? And they're like, it's too hard. It takes too much of my time and energy and focus. So inside of applying our own capacity of consciousness, you might take tap water and pray over it and say that's structured. I would agree that is structured. Now, the question I would ask is the degree of harmony that is achieved by that structuring sufficient to meet your needs in your relationship with water? And my experience of how we discern that at a physical level is if the water feels soft or wet when we go to drink it, that tends to be the characteristic of H3O2 or nature's water. So tying back to a question you asked 1 or 2 ago, how did I end up at the Aqua Energizer?
Yep.
It was a full-on emergence for all these 13 years of my career, culminating in the 2025 version of the Aqua Energizer, which has been around for 5 years now. That is finally the attunement where I feel really confident making 2 statements about the product. One is, it is the best structured water device in the world. And the second is, it carries the resonance of love and unity. And why I feel confident about that is because that's my primary intent. And I've been steering from there for 13 years. And so I feel we've finally gotten there. It's amazing.
I felt a little bit of shock run up my spine whenever you said that second part. So I was like, okay. Yeah. Some resonance hit me. Did you mention, I always try to tie it back to spring water because like you said, we're just replicating nature, and everyone, like all of the devices that float around the water world are trying to mimic something. So is there a spring or a waterfall or what did you mention last time we spoke something about 2 different waters, like the total full spectrum water, something, if I'm remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I know what you're asking about, and you're blending concepts together. So I'm just going to rescue the question.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Take it to a great topic, okay?
Yeah.
So rescuing the question, guys, Alex and I talked about another topic, and he's blending that in with this one. Doesn't matter. More interesting is the comparison of the Aqua Energizer water and spring water. I happen to be blessed that I live on Maui, and one of the most sacred places on earth that I've ever encountered is called the Iao Valley. Upstream, there's 500 inches of rain annually. So it's constantly roaring down new water. And I love that place. Like, one of my favorite things to say about it is I can take a mood in there, but I can't bring it back out because the water is so coherent. It just reorganizes anything I take to it and brings it back out. So it's always been my habit to take my water bottle with me, and I would take it and dump it out, and I'd fill back out from the stream bed. And I've had multiple months of consuming that water directly out of the stream bed. And, every time I tell somebody I do that, they say, you got to be careful. And it's like everybody's fear about me getting bacteria has come there. And it's finally, like, I've heard it so many times now, it's actually started to impact me because one of the things I'm struggling with in my body is parasites. And I'm like, well, dude, do you want to keep eating poke, they call it here, raw fish, and drinking right out of the stream bed while you're struggling with parasites? Like, does that make sense? And so I've stopped both of those practices. But the last time I did it, I took my water, which I filtered, and then I distilled, and then I aqua energized. And that was what was in the bottom of my bottle. And I dumped that out and refilled in the stream. And I was like, I don't think there's much difference anymore. Like, I think we're finally there. Like, that's how confident I am in the Aqua Energizer, is like, I think it's finally meeting nature. And so I would never choose anything over nature, but nature's water these days does, well, in all days, has carried bacteria, pathogens, and pathogens, viruses, and bacteria. Those are the 3 words I'm looking for.
That's why copper's been used.
Right. And while I do think it's possible to drink that and be okay, and I did an experiment in 2016 where I drank water through a structured water device in a little pueblo in Colombia in South America, and the water literally came out yellow and smelled horribly. And I put it through the device and I drank it because I wanted to know, would I get sick? I wanted to know if the claims people put on the internet and the testimonies that were there were valid. And my experience was I was fine. My experience of drinking out of the stream multiple months was fine. And there's so much going on in the world of viruses, pathogens, bacteria right now that it is my choice to not drink directly out of the stream anymore and to use a bacteria-based filter for any water I pull out of there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would fault you for that. I mean, someone could be like a hyper ultra purist, and I mean, we find everyone, all sorts, full spectrum on the internet. But I don't think anyone really cares about that if it's like, I want to feel water, right? That's the thing that always strikes me, like before this chat, after we met up again. Patrick and I met, what year was it? It was 2022, did you say? Yeah,
Oh,
at a
yeah, I
close.
was only in Nashville for a year, so that had to
Yeah,
be.
so we met in Asheville years ago and then reconnected for this conversation. But in between our two chats over the last week, I met maybe two people who were hydrogen water experts. Like that was their name. That handles read that, and they had all these devices, similar to all the things we've had, and they put that like distilled, then hydrogen infused through the Aqua Energizer, and they're like, no, definitely felt different. Like all of these things work differently. Like hydrogen's on the like chemistry molecule side, but structure and coherence are just different. Like coherent water is just different.
I love that you bring that up because it's a common question for people. They go, well, if I get my structured water device and it's on the whole house and then I have my filter at the sink, won't that wreck it? And it, it's all like I'm not a science guy. So the way I learn, I'm a very unusual CEO. You know, like you took the meeting with me the other day and you're like, hey, the CEO's in the meeting. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because I love people and I love water and that's what I want to talk about. So I take all these meetings and talk to all these people. And that makes me a conduit for information that flows from lots and lots and lots of people. And so, train of thought.
Whole
So what?
house coherent water
Yeah. Oh,
structures.
yeah, yeah. So the chemistry and the physics. So the the chemistry and the physics are different sciences and they're different applications.
Right.
And I found, with one exception, which is reverse osmosis, which I'll speak about in a second, that the two do not harm each other. So you all of the people out there in the water business that are doing alkaline and hydrogen and so on and so forth, they can pass the water through our device and experience a change. And I would suggest that that change feels softer, wetter, more likable. And it's an important distinction because it's a body identification with I like this water, and that's beyond the mind. Now, in the case of RO, it's kind of interesting because RO is the most widely distributed
Yeah.
filtration technology. And to my mind, it's one to be very cautious of because the way the RO process works is with enormous force and splitting. So what it does is it crashes water into a membrane, and then that membrane splits out two streams. So you have, in simple terms, a good stream and a bad stream. Now, it's the ultimate in purity, but let me ask you, I'll get a little philosophical on you for a second, Alex. If I'm one with with everything, does it serve to think about the world as good and bad? And if I remove something from something, where does it go that I'm not part of?
We're getting into some hermetic philosophy here.
Yeah. Well, I've spent 13 years thinking about water this way. And sometimes as I go to think about something, the next inspiration that comes in is like, well, what happens when water splits in those two streams? So in my experience, I lived RO for 8 years prior to ending my career as a financial advisor. And the consciousness that I was that chose RO is also the 8 years where I was sick.
Yeah.
And so I'm not blaming the water, right? You hear that. I'm not blaming it. I'm just saying I was a match to being sick. And that's what I drank while I was sick. If I drink RO water now, one of my mechanisms for discerning hydration is the inside of my cheeks. And
Hmm.
RO water causes my cheeks to dry out. it does not hydrate me. It depletes me. And if people want to prove it for themselves, they can just start to notice how they feel with it, or grab some seeds and put some seeds into dirt and water with RO next to any other kind of water. And if you still want to drink your RO at the end of that, then okay. But
Yeah,
no,
this is a huge point. And again, RO is necessary for some people. This is like like you said, the big riff in water. And on the chemistry side, I hear a lot of people who just don't feel well. And it's usually like seems to be a 6 month mark for some reason. People are like, I'm getting achy. And the only thing that I really changed was I thought I was, I got this high purity water. And I'm not going to tell them that they were wrong because they probably weren't. But I was hoping that this conversation or the Aqua Energizer would be something that I could be like, run it through this and give it some life back. Like, does that work? Because distillation is almost different. I had someone, a really good comment the other day, and it was I was cautioning people from reverse osmosis kind of for all these reasons. And reverse osmosis and distillation get paired together because they have almost nothing in them. And then people are like rainwater. And I go, not quite. But so that's like a whole, if you're just coming from a chemistry lens, all of those things look the same. But there's a whole level of difference whenever it's like in the electromagnetic atmosphere of the earth. And reverse osmosis is a very, like you said, forceful, it kind of resembles Western medicine. It's very brute force and cutting.
I'm feeling that more than ever in this conversation. Like, I thank you for your openness, which allows me to like perceive deeper and deeper. I mean, I used to tell a joke that there are two things in life that I'm opposed to. The first is my former wife's divorce attorney, and and the second is RO. And I've now made peace about the attorney.
Yeah.
So I don't like to oppose things because opposing things tires me out. But I really feel strongly that if my voice can help somebody become aware of the fuller picture of RO and possibly make a different choice, that was a good use of my life force. Like
Yeah.
I feel strongly about that. And on the distillation front, just like you said, they get lumped together.
Yeah.
But a year ago, it was August, so it's 10 months ago. I bought a distiller for the first time and I started distilling my water. And since I started, my body loves it.
Yeah.
And part of what caused that is since the COVID narrative started, there has been a move by the EPA to, in my mind, harass companies like Berkey that are removing biological contamination from
Yeah.
water. They don't, it doesn't appear that it's a prudent business practice if you're trying to stay in business and be peaceful, that you remove viruses, pathogens, and bacteria from water. And I've heard things about from some pretty well-known doctors about weaponized bacteria and these words like gain of function research
Mhm.
and the changing of DNA in bacteria. And I'm like, okay, like I'm open to experiencing distilled in my body because it removes all that stuff and to see how I feel. And my body is just like 100% stayed on distill for 10 months. And it's a
Hmm.
daily effort to move water from a gravity fed filter through a distiller and through an Aqua Energizer. And
Yeah.
prior to last August, I had been opposed to anything that caused me to have to invest my kind of presence
Yeah.
with doing it. And now I do it every day, a couple times a day, usually twice. And I've found that it's a really nice place to bring quiet back
Yeah.
and to honor water. Like, hey, sometimes I'm still rushing, but also sometimes I like hold my handheld Aqua Energizer and I like stop and feel, and I feel really good about that. So
Reminds me of chop wood, carry water. Just the presence of going to get and revere the water and be thankful for it because you're processing and having to spend time with it.
Yeah, right on. So I think distillation is something to be open to. And
The other cool thing about that, just sorry to interrupt, is I heard this just last night or something clicked. I was listening to a conversation, deep AI conversation, and the AI was like way out of the sandbox and just almost, it sounded very coherent, but it was that distillation is deprogrammed. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like blank slate, which you can then program, which would be a really good Aqua Energizer slip in there. Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. It's like I'll take that water that first I filtered. Like I want two cuts at the bacteria these days. And so I gravity filter and then I distill and then I'm coming through nature and I'm picking up the resonance of loving unity and nature. Like that's what I want in my water.
Yeah.
That feels like infinite possibilities.
Have you heard of any, does, has anyone reported running that or running reverse osmosis through that and any difference? That's what I'm very curious about. Testimonies around that. Any like felt
Great question.
difference?
I get a lot of people who are on their way into the buying process who say, well, what about with RO?
Right.
I'm not aware or able to tease out of my memory somebody who had RO that I then followed up to say, well, how's your RO water after?
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know what they say.
Yeah.
But I'll be curious about it now.
Yeah, that's my most, because they're the only people who I hear from that say they don't feel better. Usually, when you change your water, you feel better. Usually, when you step up or you think you're stepping up, you're either nothing happens and it's baseline, which is fine, or something improves, which is the goal, right? Because why would you do something otherwise? But that's the only, and it's not everyone, but that's a story that gets told to me over and over. And I'm very curious if I could be like, well, if you don't want to like completely overhaul your water choice, give it some life back, and maybe that would give it some life back.
You know, when we went through the process of this task force and refining the Aqua Energizer, we went from making them one at a time with like a blowtorch and like a man, to we make 50 at a time in an oven.
Mm.
And we really wanted to get a consistent device so that we knew on this side what the person was getting on the other side. And um, and so we've done that now. And once we finished that upgrade process, we started hearing differently from the people receiving Aqua Energizers. That like there was a lot more screaming from joy. Like it
Mm.
just the volume of the texts and the quality of the communication like went through the roof. So we had already for the last 5 years we've always had a really low return rate, but we had a meeting about that and we decided, I don't think it's changed on the website yet, but I'll honor it already. We decided to change our policy and we pay shipping both directions if somebody wants to return the
I don't know.
product. And so if you have some RO customers who aren't feeling well, ask them to buy an Aqua Energizer and let's send it out to them. And if they don't feel about it the way I feel about it, they don't love it, think it's the best thing that ever happened to their water, just tell me and I'll send a shipping label and they can send it back. I'll give them a full refund. And find out for ourselves. Like we really, when you only get a half a dozen returns in the year, it's
Mm.
really just not a big deal to offer that to people and be a great way to find out.
So I'm looking at your website right now because I am so curious of this bovet, this life force scale.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get, it says tap water is here and bottled water is here, and I test that with other things, and I agree. My curiosity is that it's just so far ahead of like Lord's spring water, which is that's like one of the holy sites, right? So there's like eight maybe that all of the medical devices kind of tried to replicate a characteristic of, like electrolysis ionizers tried to pull out the electrolysis function and splitting alkalinity and the hydrogen water. But I think the part that, there's people who went to Lord's France and drank, or Zamzam water out of Mecca, or any of these. You don't just go with like 2 bottles of water, drink for a day, come back with 2 bottles, and then have these like that amount of hydrogen is not going to give you a life-changing effect from like 2 days of 4 bottles of water. I mean, unless you're really doing it. But if
Hang
you're
on,
doing
brother. That's your reductionist brain right
it
there.
is.
Right? You see it. You know what I'm saying. Like,
But I could see that with coherence. What I'm saying is there's something deeper there. And that's the part that always bugged me about the hydrogen tech, which was like, I mean, I have hydrogen in water. I don't think you're doing like a life altering change just from that molecule. And that in itself is reductionist, which is funny. But I always knew there was something more, but I didn't know what.
yeah, it's the living characteristic of water. If you think about the level of consciousness you perceive yourself
Mm.
to be compared to an ant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Particularly if you're like standing above an ant and the ant has a path for resolving their life where it continues, and they have a path where the ant dies. And you watch this ant scurrying around, and you have total perspective on what's going to happen with that ant. Well, I look at that and I'm like, well, what has that perspective on me?
Mm.
Whose ant am I? Because sometimes I just feel like I'm scurrying around and can't really get myself to do what I think I want to do in life. And I'm like, there are greater forces in this life than human consciousness. And I find it very humbling and relieving,
Mm.
honestly.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we give up the idea that we're in control and surrender to that, then it's just a whole different experience. So I would suggest that the miracles of water and the
Mm.
miracles of nature to support us are beyond our capacity to fathom still for all of us, even with all the evolution that we've had.
Or measure.
Right? And I find that really comforting. I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but I think it feels great. So there is there is the miraculous that sometimes happens in this world. Sometimes a mother lifts a car off of their baby. Sometimes, right? That like can't happen, but it does. Sometimes things happen that we just can't imagine happening, and that's all happening in water.
Yeah.
This whole world is water.
There's a phrase that I have in water because people just, I mean, I had this perspective where I was growing microgreens and I had started drinking ionized water, and everyone thinks that water, is just H2O until they don't. Like it's very simple. It's just something just switches and you're like, oh, well, there's something else here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So these days, living on Maui, I'm guessing that about 70% of the food that I eat comes directly from the land.
Oh, wow. I thought you're
So
going the other way with that.
yeah, directly from the land. It's very rare for me to go to a supermarket. I don't buy much food. Um,
Hmm.
I get given access deer. They're overrun the island, and there
Yeah.
are people who control them, and they need people to process them and eat them. I'm on that list. And then there's avocado. For 10 months straight, I've been getting avocados from the same quarter mile of land.
Wow.
And mostly I just pick them off the ground. Like they would rot if I didn't go by and pick them up. And then there's something called breadfruit, which not that many people know about, but it's a wonderful starchy fruit. And I think that wildness of my diet
Hmm.
is having an impact. Like I think it's part of what supports me. And so I know not everybody can do that, but everybody can become aware of nature and the power for the miraculous. And
Hmm.
I definitely wasn't capable of seeing that before my water journey started. And I'm more capable now, but I don't think I'm anywhere near the end of it. I have really strong sound sensitivities.
Hmm.
So if the dogs start barking, the mowers start
Same.
going,
Yeah.
I can really crumble from it. And I've been working on it for about 5 years, and I've honestly taken a lot of ground and feel pretty close to resolved, but still, I'm very aware of that area of life. if I go into the EL Valley, that sacred stream, I have a favorite little waterfall that's about 3 to 4 feet tall, and it has a nice rock platform in the stream bed that I can stand on. And what I realized a couple of months ago is that I can bend forward with my head downstream and I can let the water run over my back, and then it runs down over my ears. And when it runs over my ears, it's loud. Like there's a lot of noise going over my ears. And it's a particularly strong energy. And the first time that I noticed that I did it, I started walking back out of the woods, and I noticed I could hear the stream bed like way down to the side apart from where I was. And I could hear all these birds. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel peace in my hearing. My
Mm.
hearing is like attuned, like, I don't know, 20-fold or 50-fold. And that's miraculous for me to have that level of peace and alignment with my hearing. We just don't know. We just don't know. And the more we get into nature and the more we wild ourselves,
Mm.
better as far as I'm concerned. It's a huge part of why I made the choice to live here. It's not because the rents.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Any of the islands, yeah, it's rough. The people are wonderful. The rents suck. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, you had a phrase last time that really stuck with me, which is like I'm sure I will slip back into my normal whenever I'm analyzing water reports like next week. But the phrase you used last time we spoke on how the perspective on water, which is it it's time to step out of the Rockefeller framework or paradigm. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what it is. Like, if you want a deep dive in programming, just go back to like 1910. But yeah, that's my left brain just it's a it's a prison. Like I've been doing a whole lot of deep dive with like Peter Crone and just mental prisons. And that's one of those prisons. Just hard sciences are very can be very imprisoning for me.
I can really help with that.
Mm.
I have a really privileged position where, because of my innate desire to communicate with people and my proclivities for being a salesman, I'm really comfortable being on the phone one on one with people and talking to them about something in their life. And so that used to be finance, but now it's water. So I've literally had thousands of calls with people who were up to something about their water and wanting to change something in their life. So they were typically calling me because they were interested in doing commerce.
Mm.
The first year that I was doing that, I was stunned by a realization. And the stunning thing was that I got a phone call from Australia, and I got a phone call from Ghana, and I got a phone call from Iowa. Right? Most of my sales are to the coast, so
Yeah.
Iowa is like as weird as Ghana and Australia. And you can change the accent, and you can change the age, the gender, the religion, the this and the that about the person, but they still had the same questions. And I attributed it back then to the power of global marketing and these billion-dollar budgets that these corporations have to spread their truth and to make people identify. You know, I laugh when a TV commercial from the 1970s comes out of my mouth in the
Yeah.
2020s. And like it still owns a spot in my brain.
Oh,
And
highly effective. Highly effective. Yeah.
they're amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought it was just marketing, and I rested in that conclusion for about 10 years. And the last 6 months, I've pierced to the next level of the conversation and was like, oh my gosh, it's not just the marketing, it's the media and the education and the marketing blended together.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I want to tell people is the mind that you have that asks the questions, that needs the answers in a certain way to feel safe about water, right? It's a purity conversation based in removal. That conversation was programmed into you.
Yeah.
It did not come from your heart. It did not come to you while you were dreaming. It did not come from your creator or your God. It came from an agenda that has you be separate and afraid. And so thankfully, so many thousands of conversations took me first to see that's the way it was 10 years ago, but now to see that really our whole culture comes from there, and that we're not naturally fearful. We're just really easy to antagonize with fear. And so, again, that ant relationship with consciousness, like who's programming the fear into everyone about water? So thankfully that heart energy that I followed to begin opening up this path has stayed so strong and so true that on behalf of all of us, I could be one of the leaders to throw a voice into the conversation. Hey, look at unity. Look at water as everything. Some might even say, consider water as God. Like you could go as far in that as you want. Like whoever anybody's God is fine with me. It's just worthy of consideration. And then consider that every question that you have until you're coming from quantum physics and oneness and love, until you're coming from there, they're all based in fear.
Mm.
So by actually actualizing them, you are unwittingly playing a role in perpetuating fear in your relationship with water in your own life. Dang, that's powerful.
I just heard the phrase "safe and effective" go right through my brain whenever you said that, and I was just like,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah, because they own part of your, like they have all these different pieces
yeah.
that own part of your brain. And I'll tell you what I want you to know. I want you to know you. I want you to do 3 days on, 3 days off, and I want you to feel your feelings. Because in discovering that, you can be your own water expert and you can tell me what's so, and I'll be like, I'll be in awe, you know? Like that dude knows what's right for them. And that's what I want is for us to know what's right for us.
Yeah.
So at stake here, Alex, is I used to look, deep thoughts, definitely. Like I look up in the sky and I see the chemtrail planes.
Mm.
I'm like, well, I don't have an Air Force. So I'm not going to bring them down through combat. So how am I going to get those planes out of the sky? And I do have an answer. And the answer is I'm going to spread living water into the heart of the pilot. And that living water is going to reconnect the pilot with truth and with their creator. And when that person can feel themselves and they're connected with their truth and they know who they are, they'll come to work one day and say, I'm sorry, I'm not taking that order. I'm not dropping chemicals on Earth anymore. I'm done with that. So, and if anybody still thinks that chemtrails are a controversy, just look at the laws that have made it a felony to drop chemtrails in Florida and the other states that are pursuing that. But that's the dream: is we touch the heart and we reclaim humanity through our own individuality and through our hearts. And when we get enough great people knowing who they are and saying, not on my watch, not like that anymore, not for a paycheck, not for the rewards that you promised me from participation in the system because I'm too true to nature and to what we really are. That's when we free ourselves. And that is my big dream now. It started with plastic bottles
I was
and
gonna say, how's the plastic going? Yeah.
it's evolved to that. Well, the plastic's going well. You know, you've got the blue, beautiful blue bottle love in your presence
Oh
behind.
yeah, so you have yeah, this is from Caden and she's coming on next. And do I remember correctly that she has some custom ones if someone wants to try an Aqua Energizer that fits in this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Any of Caden's people who want an Aqua Energizer, the end right here is currently constituted does not fit in her bottles, but she's in a pre-order process right now and she's gathering orders and then we're going to make a bunch that do fit in her
Nice.
bottles. So
Yeah, I think that's probably, I mean, that's the market because yeah, I would get one and it would need to go in here. So I will be getting one of those. And oh, what else do I have to say with that? I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh, that's right. If someone gets an Aqua Energizer, is there something you would tell them to do that might tune them into their body a little more when they were actually going to do the 3 days on, 3 days off? Or is it just going to be so overwhelming that they'll feel it anyway if
No,
it works for them?
no, that's a great question. Um, that's a great question. So it's in the realm of the subtle, and we've been distracted from there.
Mm.
So we're used to putting all of our like bowing to authority to the outside, and we're used to giving up our power and not feeling our feelings. So, like if you're running um, alcohol, then the feelings are not, in my experience, clear. If you're running sugar and it's fairly intense, same thing. Caffeine, there's a possibly a state of agitation. So I went through stages wherein um, the energy that I sought from my behaviors started to get met by my structured water.
Oh, interesting.
And so eventually, the evolutionary process, as I've experienced it, is that once enough of my needs were actually getting met by something healthy, I stopped having a desire to participate in the roller coasters that are man-made. So those roller coasters are creating noise like my flapping hands. And if the hands are flapping like this, how am I gonna feel myself? Like I can't feel myself right now. So what feeling myself looks like is taking 3 breaths, quieting myself, coming into awareness. And it doesn't have to be that difficult. You can notice the way your skin feels, particularly in this part of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
You can notice the inside of your cheeks. Like I've been talking for about 4 hours straight right now,
Yeah.
and I'm dehydrated. Even though I've been drinking while we're on the call, it's not enough. And I'm well prepared,
Yeah.
when I come to a call, but I need to go outside and touch my feet on the earth and like settle into myself for a minute, and then I'll feel better. But I can tell right away from the inside of my cheek where I'm at. And usually the inside of my cheeks are like gushy. They
Mm.
like, when I bring attention to them, like, oh wow, that's really wet. And right now I've got like a little bit of tingling in my throat. My tongue is dry. The sides of my mouth are dry.
Mm.
So sound sensitivity, it's a big theme in my life. And
Yeah.
there's a dog that lives about 10 feet over this way behind this back wall. And the dog lives in a crate 24/7, 365. And I've talked to the people about the dog's there to be a watchdog. So its job is to bark when something happens at the street. And the dog does that fairly well. I'm I'm pretty at ease with it. Like, sometimes I yell at her to hush. I'll say her name and I'll say hush, but mostly she doesn't bark for very long. Now, yesterday something happened where somebody who hasn't been in my life for a couple years came back into my life, and we had a phone call, and she wasn't very nice. And it reminded me of the way certain people used to speak to me in my life and the type of trauma that I've been through in this life that's like a familiar pattern. And
Mm.
I heard different things from her that were reminiscent, like all the way back to the beginning of me. And it shook me. Like I handled the call differently than I would have, but it still shook me. And afterwards, all the dogs in the neighborhood, there are about 6 dogs that can get under my skin, and all of them went off for the next bunch of hours. And I recognize the synchronicity of the way that happens as a gift now.
Mm.
That they're all colluding to show me where the trauma is stored so I can do my healing, so I can be free of it. And so, interestingly, I told you I've been talking for about 4 hours today.
Yeah.
And there was a dog barking pretty consistently through the first 2 hours. And I kept like checking in with myself. I was fine. So I've come to understand that literally, literally, not kidding, no exceptions, everything that's happening for you in your world or me in my world is there as a service to our consciousness and to reflect. Sorry, I turned my phone back on when we had a little break in the energy
right.
there. My bad. To reflect our inner state into our outer world, so we see it, so we can become conscious of it, so we can give it an opportunity to heal. That to me is the law of how things work.
The universe or reality will put things in front of you to show you where you're not free.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
It'll reflect back what my inner state is. And so it's not just there for the seeker going up the journey of becoming free. It's there for the Buddha to see joy in everything. Right? It's just a reflection of how we feel inside.
Sounds a lot like water. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. The deeper you go in this conversation, the more you realize that the properties of life that are kind of eternal and that are most meaningful and most supportive, they're a lot like water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The most fascinating aspects in health or being is a better word, like human discovery, involve for me light, genetics, and water. Like there's an interplay between like fascia, light, or bioelectric, the like deeper aspects of humanness that aren't biochemistry, I guess, are like really interesting. And there's a ton of people looking and a lot of attention on it right now. And I'm pretty hopeful that there will just be leaps in hopefully well-being, but definitely consciousness.
Yeah.
Because the awareness is there. We're shifting, even my lifetime.
It is for sure. And we talked a little bit about the water scientists and who, what, when. And the last 30 years or 40 years of water scientists have brought discoveries. I think I got my scientists right. It's Luc Montagnier, and the discoveries of DNA being carried in water where there isn't any physical DNA in there, but it was actually just imparted into the water through electromagnetic frequency.
The imprint.
Yeah. And so we know that water carries DNA, it can carry biological information. So we're just beginning to understand.
Yeah, still scratching the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of what keeps me humble, curious, and in awe. And those are, I think, pretty good places to be.
What keeps everything fascinating? Yeah.
And it takes the pressure off.
Yeah, it's true. We won't ever know everything, nor do we have to. I'm speaking for myself. Yeah.
Yes, brother. I was speaking to you too.
Yeah. I wanted to get into agriculture in this, but anything over hour and a half and people usually drop off rapidly just because the attention span wanes. So we might do another episode involving coherent water, structured water, and regenerative agriculture, or just biofields in agriculture. And you mentioned someone who was testing the energizers out in that field. So I might want to pick his brain too.
Yeah, more than testing. Like, he's the guy you want to interview on that topic. Like,
okay.
His name is Chad Wall, and I'll send you his contact. And
okay.
He's fabulous.
Nice. Yeah. That's how I got in water. So that's still my fascination because it's the intersection of all the regenerative practices, like for our own healing, for ecosystem. I mean, it always ties back into water. You can't have coherent fabric of reality without water.
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like to impart everyone with in closing? This has been almost as much about consciousness as about water because they're hard to differentiate. So I really appreciate the breadth of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my path has pulled me into questions that most people won't even think to ask. And I didn't will that. I didn't ask for it. I just saw a problem in the world called plastic water bottles, and I felt a passion for it. And then each step of the way unfolded something new that made a new question available or a new insight that pierces.
Yeah.
And so if I now I've got the benefit of 13 years of that, the gift that I want to open for other people is that your personal relationship with water is infinitely deep. Infinitely. That means infinite means you can't fathom what it is. It's beyond your capacity to think. And how you get there is you simply bring more coherence to the water in your life. You can do that with an Aqua Energizer. I'd be honored to be part of your journey, but by no means are we the only answer to that. You can pray and get yourself there. You can use crystals. You can use whatever consciousness technology works for you. I think the Aqua Energizer is a shortcut to make it easier, but anybody's authentic path, I'm so excited to hear what that is. So consider pursuing water not as H2O, as man-made water with a limited amount of energy that it no longer has nature to donate to you. But consider nature's water and having living water in your body, and then be open to becoming somebody beyond which your family, your school system, your lover, your best friend ever thought you were. That you could literally blow your mind, right? For the freedom of that, and live life from the most exciting and dynamic place. That's my gift to other people, is to tell them that happened for me. Maybe it could happen for you too.
That was beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate that. Blew my mind multiple times. If someone wants to get one, how do they get one?
Yeah, that's easy. So you go to thewellnessenterprise.com, or if Alex posts a link below this video, you click on his link. And we're going to add, we believe in uplifting everyone together. So we're going to make a donation to Alex from anybody that comes to us. So we put a drop-down menu in our checkout, and it's a mandatory field because we want to know how you got to us. And you just tell us that Alex Corey sent you, and then we'll be able to make a donation to him for that. And that way we all uplift everybody together. So you just go to thewellnessenterprise.com. The Aqua Energizer is one of our two primary brands, and you just pick a device. Most people, the portable that we were showing in the video, most people get the portable first, and then all the other devices are for convenience. So we have the shower device, we have the sink device, we have the whole house, we have one for the garden and one for the pivots for agriculture, but the portable is enough. And the reason you start with the portable is, even if you started with the whole house device, then once you get used to drinking structured water, you still need a portable when you go on the road. So if you just start with the portable, it lets you build your confidence with the least investment. And then over time, you can choose the other devices for convenience if that's your path. So really easy. And
Yeah,
be sure to tell us that Alex sent you.
that was perfect. Thank you so much, Patrick. And we're going to do this again because I feel the conversation is completely different than I usually have. So I think we're going to do a take two of this at some point.
That's great. Just see what questions bubble up in you, and we'll just unfold them at any time. We can even do a segment if you want to do a small video about one topic. I'll hop in
Sure.
with you on anything. However you're guided, I'm here to answer my part.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
That was one of my favorite episodes. If you would like to try an Aqua Energizer and see what it feels like, and if your body likes the water better, if it feels wetter and softer like Patrick described, you can go to thewellnessenterprise.com, like you mentioned, and use code Alex Corey, ALEXCOREY, all capitals, for 10% off, and give it a try. Like you mentioned, if your body doesn't like it, they'll ship you a free return label and you just send it back. If you have a blue bottle from Blue Bottle Love, like I do, I absolutely love these. These are to preserve a lot of that structure and that coherence, keeps them living longer, and mine's the Way Forward, which is why I chose to rename my water company Way Forward Waters. If you have one of these, because of the custom fit on the top, go to bluebottlelove.com, and I believe it's under Blue Bottle Love Recommends. I will put the link below. You can use code AlexCorey922, all capitals, ALEXCOREY 922, on bluebottlelove.com if you have one, so that it fits in there. But if you're going straight through the wellnessenterprise.com, just code AlexCorey. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time.